Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. Now, somebody recently 5-0'd with this Orzhov Smallpox list, and for those of you that don't know, Smallpox is one of my favorite cards in Magic. I love the archetype in basically any way that it's been played in Modern, and so I was like, alright, seems like it might be fun to play some Smallpox today, so that's what we're going to do. For those of you that don't know, Smallpox is a card that is the poster child of symmetrical effects are not symmetrical in Magic. So each player loses a life, discards a card, sacks a creature, and then sacrifices a land. It's a very early way to hate on your opponent's mana base, as well as just waste all their resources. When your opponent discards a card, sacks a creature, sacks a land, and then loses a life, they basically lost 3 cards. Now, you cast Smallpox, so you're down a card, but when you discard a Lingering Souls or a Nether Spirit, you sack no creatures or a token, and then you sack a Flagstones of Trocare, you're really only down a card and a half. So you basically 2-for-1 your opponent. It's actually like a 3-for-1.5 kind of a deal. And to support this, we have a bunch of attrition-based things, so we can Thoughtseize, Inquisition our opponent, take away their early plays, or we can let them selectively keep early plays that we can take advantage of with Smallpox or Collective Brutality, that sort of a thing. We have Fatal Push and Blood Chief's Thirst as our removal of choice. We have Maze Mind Tome as a way to sort of recoup some card advantage after dumping, hand hate, early removal, that sort of a thing. Liliana the Veil, one of the best stacks engines to ever exist, so of course we have her in this deck. We also have Lingering Souls, Nether Spirit to provide a clock. Kaya, Orzhov Usurper, helps hate on helps hate on decks that automatically use the graveyard. Can happen to negate some 1 mana cost permanents or less. Can kill tokens and such. Her ult can win the game in a deck like this because we keep putting our opponent's cards in the graveyard. She can keep exiling them. Kaya's Guile is just an excellent all-around card. This card basically does everything, and if you ever entwine it, you're in a good place. In our top end, we have Liliana, Waker of the Dead, who kind of acts like Liliana the Veil number 5, and Sorin, Solemn Visitor. This is not my favorite Sorin. I much prefer Lord of Innistrad, the other black-white Sorin that exists at 4 mana. But this one's ult is Abyss, so versus creature decks, it can absolutely win the game. Can give all your Lingering Souls tokens, lifelink, etc. It's very strong. And of course, Smallpox does not make us sack Planeswalkers, so Planeswalkers are our number 1 way of trying to take over the game by gaining advantage while wasting our opponent's resources. Okay, out of the sideboard, this is a very deep and complex sideboard as compared to what I'm used to. We have Nile Spellbomb, Surgical Extraction for Grave Hate. We have Damping Spheres for Anti-Tron, Anti-Storm. Fragmentize for basically White's version of Nature's Claim. Collective Brutality is great versus decks running Mana Dorks. It can also just be an additional duress if we need it. Vampire Hexmage is very good versus permanents that get 1/1 or permanents that get any sort of counter, which does include Planeswalkers. We have Plague Engineers to hate on tribal decks. Rotting Regisar if we find that we absolutely need a big beat stick of some kind to end the game quickly, or we suspect our opponent is not going to be playing creature removal post-board. We have Damnation as a board wipe if we need it, and Timely Reinforcements as a way to regain some life versus burn. And, yeah, I think that is pretty sufficient for a deck tech, so we're going to go ahead and take this into a constructed league, and hopefully we do well. Alright, I will see you all in round 1. Alrighty, round 1, here we go. I would like to play first. No Smallpox, but we have Inquisition and Fatal Push and Blood Chief's Thirst into potentially a 3-mana Planeswalker. So hopefully this is good. Hopefully we're playing against a deck where Fatal Push and Blood Chief's Thirst matters. Now, Blood Chief's Thirst also has the hidden mode of killing one of the Planeswalkers that Smallpox is weak to, which is Renin 6. So occasionally, if we can get that kind of value, it's great. The only other Planeswalker it can target for 1 mana isn't played in any format ever. So that's all I'll say about that. So we're going to start Shambling Vent, because Fetid Heath doesn't tap for mana of color the first time it, or if it's the first thing that comes out. Oh man, show me a Smallpox. If you can Smallpox your opponent's Utopia Sprawled land, you're living the high life. There it is. Play Smallpox. So, cast Smallpox. We're going to discard Liliana, Waker of the Dead, and we're going to sack Fetid Heath. But we just made our opponent discard. They lost 2 permanents. And judging by the fact they discarded a land, they must have a very land-heavy hand. But I think my opponent is Heliod Company, which means they're probably going to play a land and then a dork, and then we can push the dork. Oh, okay. Well, we need to kind of just rip lands now, which is not what is happening, unfortunately. Give our opponent the Old Inquisition. Eladamri's Call, 2 lands, Collected Company. Alright, well we have perfect information, and to our knowledge, our opponent will not be doing anything for the next couple of turns, unless they get a good top deck. We untap, draw another Smallpox, pass the turn. Was kind of a risky Smallpox early, but at the same time, we did have a pretty good chance at drawing a land, because we do have 25 lands in this deck. Okay, opponent plays a Windswept Heath, immediately cracks it. They're probably going to play a Heliod, I imagine. Yep, that's a pretty good top deck. We untap, we draw Marsh Flats. Play Marsh Flats. Now, we know our opponent is holding Collected Company, and that's it. They have 1 other card. If I cast Smallpox, odds are they will discard Collected Company, because they're not going to get to it anytime soon. If I don't cast Smallpox here, and my opponent has a land, between Fatal Push and Bloodchief's Thirst, we might be able to handle our opponent's creatures. I don't think I can actually cast Smallpox here. I think it's too risky. Okay, opponent plays Walking Ballista on 1. Passes, so push the Ballista. We untap. We draw a Silent Clearing. So play Silent Clearing. Opponent's going to have a Collected Company, but I think we have to stick Kaya right now. So let's go ahead and fetch up a basic Swamp. Play Kaya. Uptick, exiling Ballista and Eladamri's Call. Pass the turn. Now that we have a Planeswalker on board, casting Smallpox is pretty good. So opponent plays Ranger Captain of Eos, and they're going to fetch up a 1-drop or less. It's probably going to be another Ballista, I imagine. It is. Now they could sack Ranger Captain on our upkeep to prevent us from casting spells, although I think we're good to cast Smallpox here. Yeah, okay. After thinking about it for a bit, I could Kaya's Guile, but I think the Smallpox here is just too high value to not do, basically. The question is, what card do we discard? And it's probably Bloodchief's Thirst. Probably. I like Kaya's Guile as a potential, next spell. The problem is we have to give up a land here. Opponent had no reason not to sack Ranger Captain. I mean, I could follow this up with a Thoughtseize, and they might be sad about it, but... They discard Walking Ballista. We sack a Swamp. Uptick, exiling the 2 creatures out of their grave. Pass the turn, leave up Fatal Push. Opponent did discard Walking Ballista, so they don't have it anymore. They untap, drop to 3, and pass. We untap. We draw Godless Shrine. So, uptick, exile our opponent's fetch lands. Play a Godless Shrine untapped. Pass the turn. So my opponent has 6 cards exiled, meaning Kaya can ult for a total of 6 damage. Opponent plays an Auriok Champion and passes. I think we're going to make them sack, and we're going to get a 1/1 Spirit. Okay. We untap. We draw Bloodchief's Thirst. Uptick Kaya. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 1. So now the big deal is if our opponent does play a land and cast Collected Company, hopefully they don't hit anything too threatening. Okay, opponent plays Skyclave Apparition, which unfortunately for us will exile Kaya. So no Kaya ult for us. Yep. Now I could sack Silent Clearing for a draw here and Fatal Push, but I'm going to wait and see if I can draw a land, because kicking Bloodchief's Thirst means we do effectively the same thing without expending a permanent resource. But now... Okay, we draw a Smallpox. Fatal Push, Skyclave Apparition. Now the problem is I don't get to attack with this 3/3 illusion this turn. So maybe it was better because my opponent would be on a 3-turn clock rather than 4. So opponent untaps after going to 11. I would like to draw a Flagstones of Trocaire right here. Fetid Heath works too. So play Fetid Heath. Black, black. We'll go ahead and Smallpox. Discarding Lingering Souls. We do have to sack the Spirit to do this, but opponent finally gave up on Collected Company. And then we sack Fetid Heath. Opponent sacks a forest. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 3. They go to 6. They untap. And they scoop it up. That felt pretty good. So, versus my opponent's deck... So Heliod's kind of a problem, but there's not a lot we can do about him. We don't play Path for the reason that we don't want to give our opponent lands. It kind of negates the usefulness of Smallpox. They don't really use the Grave, so we don't need Nile, Spellbomb, or Surgical. Surgical potentially can get, like, duplicates of cards if we can make them discard and whatnot, so, like, it maybe has some utility. I like Brutality here. I think I like Brutality on the draw slightly better than a single Smallpox. Timely Reinforcements could buy us potentially a lot of time, but I think we're just going to run it back now. And that hand was nowhere near ideal for us, so... This hand really isn't either. It's kind of slow. Maze Mind Tome is pretty good, but I think we can do better. I consider this a little bit better. I'm going to put back Lingering Souls. Okay, opponent starts Misty Rainforest. Cracks it. Let's hope they start Mana Dork, because I will Bloodchief's Thirst a Mana Dork. Temple Garden. Mana Dork. We untap. Draw Godless Shrine. That's good, because we do need lands. Kill the Mana Dork. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays a Windswept Heath. And do a second Mana Dork. We untap. We draw Fetid Heath. So, Bloodchief's Thirst. And play Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. Next turn we'll have access to Kaya's Guile. Opponent needs lands because they did not crack Windswept Heath. They play another Windswept Heath. Crack Windswept Heath number 1. Crack Windswept Heath number 2. They play Heliod. We untap. Draw Marsh Flats. Play Flagstones, pass the turn. Leave up Kaya's Guile. Okay, opponent Utopia Sprawls a Temple Garden. They play Spike Feeder, so they have the Infinite Life combo, which is annoying. So make them sack and make a Spirit. Opponent is going to gain Infinite Life, so I'll come back when they're done. Opponent was kind enough to at least let me know that, hey, I'm going to be doing this for at least a couple minutes if you need to take a bathroom break. So, that was nice of them. Okay, now we have the decision of playing Sorin or Kaya. And honestly, I think we play Kaya because we can nuke Utopia Sprawl. Which could matter if my opponent was trying to play Collected Company or the like. Go to combat. Attack them for 1. Opponent untaps. Plays a Horizon Canopy. Plays a Skyclave Apparition, exiling Kaya. Okay. We untap. Draw Liliana. Play Lily. Make our opponent sack. Okay. Play Fetid Heath. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Opponent goes down to 249. Okay, Walking Ballista, presumably. Opponent does not ping Liliana. So they're trying to go for the victory here. Yep. We don't have an answer to that Walking Ballista, so we'll go ahead and scoop. Cool. Back on the play, I definitely want to be playing a Smallpox. And I think I'm going to go down 1 Bloodchief's Thirst, because I do have the extra Collective Brutality. Alright, I would like to play first. We have a Thoughtseize, but not until turn 2. A hand like this is actually kind of hard to pass, so I'm going to keep... It's a little bit slow. I really wish we had an untapped Black Source on turn 1, but I'll live. Start Shambling Vent, pass the turn. Now if we could draw a Swamp, Godless Shrine, Fetid Heath, anything like that, it'd be fantastic. Opponent did not start Mana Dork or Utopia Sprawl, which is probably good news for us. So let's go ahead and Thoughtseize our opponent. Take a look at what's going on. Opponent has Spike Feeder, Heliod, Auriok Champion. Take Auriok Champion. Play Plains. Pass the turn. Maybe I should have put Surgical Extraction in the deck just so like I could surgically extract Heliod if I got a good Thoughtseize off. So opponent will probably play Prismatic Vista here. Okay, they play a Forest. So they either drew something they want to play right now. They did. It's Utopia Sprawl. So we know what cards are remaining in their hand. We untap, draw Flagstones, play Flagstones, Thoughtseize our opponent, take Heliod, pass the turn. So opponent probably just plays Fetch Land and then Spike Feeder here, unless they top deck something better. If they top deck a second Heliod, then that's what they would do. There's the Spike Feeder. They play Windswept Teeth, which is the card they top decked. Okay, we draw Godless Shrine. So we're either playing Kaya or Kaya's Guile this turn. And I think it's Kaya. I could downtick, but my opponent is going to have 4 mana next turn anyway, and that would guarantee that Kaya dies. So we're going to exile Heliod and Misty Rainforest. Pass the turn. When it cracks Windswept Teeth, gets a Temple Garden tapped. They untap. They attack Kaya. Kaya goes to 2. Second Spike Feeder. Yep. And a Horizon Canopy. So we know our opponent has Prismatic Vista, 1 unknown in hand. Uptick Kaya, exiling Auriok Champion and Windswept Teeth. Pass the turn. Basically just representing Shambling Vent block here. Opponent sacks Horizon Canopy, gets a draw. So opponent goes to combat. They're debating about whether it's worth it to attack Skyclave Apparition. So make our opponent sack. We'll get a 1/1. Are they just going to cash in? Okay. They're choosing a Spike Feeder here to sack. That's fine. Then we let Skyclave Apparition exile Kaya because we don't have a choice. And then we can Fatal Push this other Spike Feeder. We have a lot more Edict effects, and if we hit something like Skyclave Apparition with them to get a token, I could actually have hit Skyclave here, but... So my opponent is fetching an untapped land so they can move a counter from Spike Feeder over to Skyclave Apparition and then gain a life. That's fine. Yep. Okay, we untap. We draw. Smallpox. So, go to combat. Attack our opponent for 1. They take 1 and go to 20. We can't cast Lingering Souls if we pitch Lingering Souls this turn, because we won't have black mana untapped, but Smallpox. And we're going to discard Nether Spirit. Opponent discarded Prismatic Vista, presumably because that's the card we know about. Then we sack Flagstones. We get a 3/3 blue illusion. Flagstones gets us a Godless Shrine. Tapped. And we pass. Now if we draw an untapped land, we can Lingering Souls, flashback Lingering Souls, and we should be getting back a Nether Spirit here. This is probably a Collected Company. It is not. It is a Walking Ballista on 2. So get back Nether Spirit. I would like removal for Walking Ballista. That is not what I asked for. So go to combat. Attack for 3. If my opponent has Heliod and untapped land, we lose to infinite life gain, but... Or not infinite life gain, infinite damage. I guess it's both. Play Shambling Vent. Cast Lingering Souls. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. If they have Collected Company, that could get them to Heliod. Skyclave Apparition, exiling Nether Spirit. Opponent passes. We untap. Draw Liliana, Waker of the Dead. So we can use Liliana to kill Walking Ballista, or to kill Skyclave. But we're going to attack first. The reason being is, if we downtick Liliana, she does die to Ballista basically for free. But I think that's actually what we have to do. Like, we can't just let our opponent keep Walking Ballista when they could just top deck a way to kill us. I could play her and uptick her to force my opponent to discard, because then my opponent would have to top deck Heliod or Collected Company, and then we would have a turn. She dies either way, so I guess we have to decide whether or not the card in my opponent's hand or this Walking Ballista is higher priority. And it's probably Walking Ballista. So they'll ping Liliana, and then Walking Ballista can ping us. Okay, opponent untaps. Opponent untaps. They have 2 cards in hand. They play Arbor Elf. And then they play a land, so they have no cards left in hand. We untap. We draw Marsh Flats. Animate Shambling Vent. Go to combat. Swing with the team. Opponent could double block the Illusion or double block the Shambling Vent if they wanted to, but that would increase our clock if they did that. So we hit them for 6, they go to 5. Play Marsh Flats. Fetch up a Swamp. Then play Lingering Souls. It's kind of nice that Liliana, Waker of the Dead actually can function as a removal spell. It's one of the reasons why I liked Liliana of the Dark Realms a lot. Especially in a deck like this, because Liliana of the Dark Realms could continually fetch you lands, which is what you need when you're sacking your own lands. But thankfully we win the match, even through infinite life gain shenanigans. That makes me feel good. So, I will see you all in round 2. Alright, time for round 2. Alright, this seems like a reasonable opener. Depending on whether our opponent starts Dork or doesn't, we have a turn 1 play into a turn 2 play. If this is Burn, Collective Brutality does a lot of work. Same with Blitz, really. So I think what we're going to do is play Marsh Flats, crack Marsh Flats for a basic Swamp, and Inquisition here. And it would appear that I was right to Inquisition. So we're going to take Light Up the Stage from our opponent. Pass the turn. Opponent plays Scalding Tarn. Attacks us for 1. We draw Silent Clearing. So play Marsh Flats. Cast Inquisition. Opponent just lets us have that Inquisition. Interesting. They draw Fiery Islet, which means they will be able to play Stormwing Entity the turn after this one. So we take Lightning Bolt from them to save as much damage as possible. And we fetch up another basic Swamp to just Fatal Push now. Okay. So now my opponent can fetch a land. And then on our turn, Lava Dart and cast Stormwing, or on their turn, Lava Dart and cast Stormwing Entity, at which point we can Liliana the Veil downtick. Liliana will probably then end up dying to flashback Lava Dart, but at the same time, it's not that big of a deal. So here comes the Stormwing Entity. Opponent played Scalding Tarn, so we did have perfect information. Okay, we draw Shambling Vents. Play Silent Clearing. Downtick, make him sack Stormwing. Pass the turn. This opponent Manamorphose off the top into red-blue. Opts. They may just have to flashback Lava Dart, and they do. They play Fiery Islet. They cycle it. We untap. Draw Godless Shrine. I'm going to cycle my own Silent Clearing here because I do have so many lands, and then play Shambling Vent. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They have 3 cards in hand. At least one of them is a land from the way my opponent is playing. Draw an Urborg. So, play Godless Shrine tapped. 2 modes. Duress Drain. Discarding Godless Shrine. I don't think my opponent would have kept a sorcery in hand unless it was a light up the stage. Mutagenic Growth doesn't have a target, though, which would explain. I'm glad I did not try animating Shambling Vent to attack, because it would have just immediately died to a Lightning Bolt. So, fire up Shambling Vent, go to combat. Did my opponent draw another Lightning Bolt? This is only their 3rd out of 4 Lightning Bolts. That's pretty good top deck luck. Play Godless Shrine tapped, pass the turn. Opponent untaps and draws. We draw Smallpox. Play Smallpox. Discard Urborg. Opponent discards Spire Bluff Canal, sack a Swamp. An opponent sacks a Mountain. Pass to our opponent's turn. They top deck. They play a Monastery Swift Spear, and they forget to attack. We draw Plains. So, Bloodchief's Thirst. Play a Plains. Pass the turn. They missed 1 point of damage. We untap. We draw Lingering Souls. So play Lingering Souls, pass the turn, opponent Mutagenic Growths so that they can play their Stormwing entity. So let's see how they scry. 1 card on the bottom, 1 card on the top. If we could top deck another Smallpox here, that'd be amazing. Alright, Bloodchief's Thirst works. We'll just pay full price for it. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 2. Now if they kept a light up the stage or something like that, they're going to be in trouble. Opponent kept Manamorphose on top, and they drew a Scalding Tarn. We untap, draw another Bloodchief's Thirst, play Lingering Souls out of the grave, hit our opponent for 2, take them to 9. They untap. They draw a Sprite Dragon. We untap, draw Smallpox. So, go to combat, attack them for 4. They don't chump. Well, since we would have to discard to Smallpox anyway, we're going to Bloodchief's Thirst. This lets us keep 4 attackers, and my opponent would be at 4 if they had to crack Scalding Tarn, so they basically can't. We deny them another mana that way. It's kind of the same as casting Smallpox, but we get to keep Smallpox. So, I'm going to bring in Surgical Extractions versus this opponent, in addition to Collective Brutality and Timely Reinforcements. So what is that, 4 cards? Versus this opponent, I mean, I could even bring in Damping Sphere here. So what was that? 2 Surgicals, Timely, and a Collective Brutality. So I need to cut 4 cards. Damping Sphere is nice because my opponent could potentially try and cast multiple cards a turn, but it's probably too slow. I like Maze Mind Tome, but I think it's worse than the cards we're bringing in here. And I'm going to cut 1 Thoughtseize, and I'm going to cut Nether Spirit. Nether Spirit's basically free, but it's not going to be relevant versus the kind of creatures my opponent has in their deck. Man, if that was a Thoughtseize and a Surgical, I would consider it, but we're going to mulligan. Okay, this I will keep, and I'm going to put back Sorin. So my opponent has mulligan to 5 cards. So our Thoughtseize and Collective Brutality should be pretty powerful here. Opponent is starting with a play on turn 1, so it's probably a Swift Spear, Soulscar Mage. We draw Inquisition, which is a better start than I had anticipated. Take Swift Spear from them. Opponent has a land and a Stormwing entity. So short of a Mutagenic Growth or a Manamorphose, they can't actually play Stormwing entity this turn. So what are the odds they drew a single spell? I'm going to 2-mode, kill and drain. If they have a spell, they're just going to use it here, and I'm going to dump Thoughtseize. And my logic behind dumping Thoughtseize is Kaya's Guile is going to net this Stormwing entity, provided we kill this Soulscar Mage, and we did. Okay, opponent cracks Scalding Tarn, gets a Steam Vents tapped. They really want to thin their deck and get them spells they could cast. Okay, opponent plays a Sprite Dragon into a Fiery Islet. They, for some reason, don't attack. I'll play Shambling Vent, Bloodchief's Thirst, pass the turn. We know our opponent's only card in hand was Stormwing Entity, so they start Opt, so they will be able to play Stormwing Entity this turn, and that will get very swiftly answered by Kaya's Guile, which will also make us a token. Opponent does get to scry. They put 1 card on the bottom and 1 card on the top. We untap. We draw Lingering Souls. So each opponent sacrifices a creature, make a 1/1. Play a Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. Now we have the option of Lingering Souls or Shambling Vent Animate. Opponent hard casts Light Up the Stage, plays a tap land, and has a Lightning Bolt. We draw a Fatal Push. I know Lingering Souls is higher value right now, but because my opponent's tapped out and I wouldn't mind gaining more life, I'm just going to do this. Okay, opponent plays a Mountain. They're almost certainly going to cycle Fiery Islet before they do anything. They Lightning Bolt the Spirit. We untap and draw Surgical. So cast Lingering Souls, and I'm going to Surgical a threat on their draw step. The question is, which threat is most appropriate? Okay, they're going to Spell Pierce us. We will not pay 2 for Spell Pierce. And honestly, I think Stormwing Entity is our hardest thing to answer. It also provides them value by scrying. So stop on their draw step. And we're going to hit it with Surgical. Okay, they're holding 2 mountains. They did bring in Bedlam Reveler as well. So if we draw another Kaya's Guile in short order, we are going to want to exile our opponent's graveyard. They have a Mountain in hand, nothing else. So we draw an Urborg. I think flashing back Lingering Souls is fine here. I could animate Shambling Vent because we know they don't have removal, but pass the turn. So they play Mountain, 1 unknown in hand. We untap, draw Lingering Souls, go to combat, attack for 2, take them to 10. Play Lingering Souls. Now I could Urborg, tap Urborg, and then play Urborg to get the other half of this. Spell Pierce countering only half of Lingering Souls is fine, but I think I'm going to save Urborg for, like, Fatal Push Revolt. Actually, they don't really have any threats that are 4 CMC or less, and we got rid of their only big ones, so maybe it was better to just flashback Lingering Souls there. I think it was almost certainly better, but... Okay, we draw Godless Shrine. Play Godless Shrine tapped. Flashback Lingering Souls. Get in for 2. So that was technically a play mistake, and it might change the clock by a turn. I don't think it matters because of how high of a life total we are, and the fact that my opponent is just, like, top-decking dead draws. But, like, their best bet was to, like, hit a Reveler of some kind and then draw a whole bunch of cards to reload, and that was totally possible. Knowing that my opponent had so many bolts, it may have been correct, because I recently played Blitz, and I did see Bedlam Reveler in the sideboard, it may have been correct to just exile my opponent's grave as the secondary mode. Because, like, what are they going to do with 1 bolt? So, something to think about anyway. I will see you all in round 3. Alright. Round 3, here we go. Or not. Okay. Cool. This seems like a pretty good start. The only way this would be better is if we top deck a Flagstones of Trocaire. So opponent starts Forest. Suspends Search for Tomorrow. Okay. Well, we draw another Smallpox, so... Start with a Thoughtseize. Let's see what's going on. It is Scapeshift. So take Farseek from them. It's kind of like Thoughtseizing a land in a way. Search for Tomorrow ticking down. They play Valakut tapped. We untap. Draw Lily. I think play Godless Shrine tapped. Thoughtseize them again. We have Summoner's Pact, Scapeshift, Bolt, and Bolt. We're going to take a Bolt. Then pass. So this turn, Search for Tomorrow comes off Suspend, and my opponent gets a draw. This turn we're going to try and stick Lily, and then we're just going to mono Smallpox after that. Opponent hard casts another Search for Tomorrow into a Mountain, representing Lightning Bolt. We untap and draw Marsh Flats. Play a Swamp. Play Lily. Uptick Lily. Discarding a Marsh Flats. Opponent discards Scapeshift. Pass the turn. Opponent is debating about Bolt on Liliana and does it. So it's looking like they're going to try and save Summoner's Pact for maybe like a Primeval Titan. They could also get Dryad, but if they Summoner's Pact this turn, little do they know they lose. So, well, I mean, I guess we have to... No, they're just dead. Maybe not. So they play Steve. And they play Steve. Alright, we untap. Draw Lingering Souls. So, play Smallpox. Opponent needs to sack both Sakura Tribe Elders right now. Strangely enough, this does actually save them from dying to Summoner's Pact. So, discard Lingering Souls. Sack a Swamp. Play Marsh Flats. Smallpox. Sack Urborg. Opponent sacks Valakut. Then we uptick Lily. Pass the turn. Opponent has to dump all of their mana into paying for Summoner's Pact. They draw a card. It is a land. We untap. Draw Nether Spirit. So fetch with Marsh Flats. I guess there's no real reason to get Godless Shrine, but get Godless Shrine. If that was the case, I probably should have just kept the Urborg and sacked the Marsh Flats. We'll see if 3 life matters. Hopefully it doesn't. Uptick, pitching Nether Spirit. The good news is even if my opponent plays Primeval Titan and gets Mountains or Valakuts, they can't do anything about it. They top deck Lightning Bolt, which is a really good top deck. We get back Nether Spirit. We draw Marsh Flats. Play it. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 2 down to 16. They untap. They explored, hitting something. Fetch up a basic swamp, because we don't really want to top deck more lands at the moment. We get Kaya's Guile. So go to combat. Attack our opponent for 4. Take them to 12. Pass the turn. Opponent has 3 turns left to do something. They might be holding mono Primeval Titans right now. We draw Godless Shrine. Play Godless Shrine tapped. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 4. They go down to 8. Pass the turn. Suspicious. They've got to be drawing spells that are just bad, like Scape Shift and Prime Time right now. And I'm not saying those cards are bad, I'm just saying in this situation, they're not great. They could have a removal too, but if they were drawing lands, they would be playing them out, no question. Opponent casts an Explore, and we get them. Alright. So versus this opponent, I think Surgical Extraction is in order. I'm going to cut a Nether Spirit and a Fatal Push. Fatal Push doesn't hit anything of consequence, I don't think. Bloodchief's Thirst potentially does, so maybe I cut Fatal Push and bring in a Collective Brutality as an additional duress. Nether Spirit still stays out. It was good in game 1, but we have better ways of ending the game. Well, I mean, it's a fast Smallpox, but it's on the draw. We do have a lot of lands, though. I think we could do better. I'm going to keep this off of the strength of Liliana, and I'm going to put back Sorin. We do need to draw something good. So opponent starts Verdant Catacombs. We draw another Collective Brutality. Play Marsh Flats, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Now they crack Verdant. I wonder if that means they kept a land light hand. Or maybe they were just trying to draw more lands. They suspend Search for Tomorrow and play Wooded Foothills. Alright. Crack Marsh Flats. Get a Godless Shrine tapped. We untap. Draw an Urborg. Play Urborg. 2 modes. Duress Drain. Pitching Lingering Souls. Opponent cracks Wooded Foothills in response. Getting a Stomping Ground untapped, so they're going to Lightning Bolt us? Or they have a Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer. Okay. So that does not happen. Pass the turn. Search for Tomorrow ticking down. I don't know if I like this card versus Hand Hate or not, in basically any deck that I play it. In my general sense, this is way better versus counter spells than it is versus Hand Hate, but I guess if you don't have anything else to bring in, and if you worry about the kinds of Hand Hate that your opponent has, it's reasonable. It's not bad. I just think it's better versus counter spells. Opponent plays a Valakut. Then plays Steve. We untap. Draw Flagstones. Play Flagstones, and we're going to Duress. No other modes. Scapeshift, Explore, Thragtusk. So next turn our opponent has a Thragtusk. Take Scapeshift from them. Pass the turn. They may not even sack Soccer Tribe Elder here because they don't have to. But if they do, that means potentially they could top deck a Primeval Titan. Search for Tomorrow coming off Suspend. They cast it, putting a Forest into play, which means they're still on the sort of primary game plan of Scapeshifting. They play a second Valakut into a Prime... Oh, okay. I was going to say into a Prime Time? Oh, jeez. Okay. They have 2 cards in hand. We draw another Urborg. Play Silent Clearing. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They probably play a Mountain and cast Explore. Opponent goes to combat and attacks. So we're going to Kaya's Guile, make them sack a creature, and then get a 1/1 so that we can chump block for Liliana if we need to. Okay, Primeval Titan pretty much seals the deal here. Because they just get 2 mountains and then play a mountain out of hand. And then we're in trouble. We need to top deck a... I think we need to top deck a Smallpox. That is not a Smallpox. Yeah, alright. I'm gonna go to the next game. So Veil of Summer. Something we gotta watch for. Run it back. I don't think we make any adjustments, just knowing what our opponent's playing. Alright, I would like to play first. This hand is very risky. We only have 1 Thoughtseize. I think I'm gonna mulligan. Okay, I like this a lot better. We will keep, put back a Lily, start Marsh Flats, fetch a basic Swamp, and Inquisition. Opponent has Sakura Tribe Elder and Search for Tomorrow. So take Search for Tomorrow. Pass the turn. Opponent kept a relatively Thoughtseize resistant hand. They probably play Ketcheria Triome or a fetch land here. They play Stomping Ground tapped. Not what I would have played, but I'm not them. We draw an Urborg. Play Godless Shrine tapped. Thoughtseize. Take Steve. So opponent has mono lands. That means if they play any non-land spells, we are going to have to assume they top deck. Play Urborg. Play Lily. We're kind of racing Lily ult to action that they have. We're going to pitch Marsh Flats because we don't need it. Oh my god, you're kidding me! There is no way we Thoughtseize our opponent with no cards in hand, and then they get a freaking Obstinate Baloth off the top. That is ridiculous. 0% chance of ever occurring, and it just happened. They play like 2 of these cards in the sideboard, by the way. It's not like it's a 4 of. Or if it is, that's uncommon. Brutal. Alright, Smallpox, please, off the top 1 time. Okay, play Silent Clearing. As I was saying, Smallpox, please, off the top 1 time. Well, Liliana, Waker of the Dead, might do something, but not for like 2 turns from now. Opponent cycles Ketcheria Triome, untaps. That was brutal. I think if my opponent didn't have that Baloth there, they were completely screwed. Even if they'd gotten it next turn, because Liliana would have survived 1 hit unless they also drew a Bolt. Okay, opponent Summoner's Pact, so they're going to get Dryad of the Elysian Grove, so that they can basically dump the rest of their hand. We kind of need an untapped land to play Liliana here. So opponent at least has Verdant Catacombs and Wooded Foothills they can play. 2 Valakuts. We need an untapped land right now. Take 4, go to 13. Land. Thoughtseize does not do it. We're dead. Wow. Well, I mean, sometimes they just get you. I think we should have won that match, but sometimes they're just gonna get you. I'll see you guys in round 4. Alright, round 4, here we go. We are on the draw for round 4. Man, if we can top deck a, did my opponent mulligan? This actually matters a lot. They choose to play with 7. I'm actually gonna mulligan this hand. Alright, this I will keep. Put back a Marsh Flats. Let's see what our opponent does. I think as long as we don't have that kind of Baloth luck, we should be fine. Says man who is not fine. So they'll take Inquisition here. Whether they're Death Shadow, the Rakdos deck, that plays like Croxa, they could actually even be 8-rack, or Waste Not even. Whatever deck they're playing, they take Inquisition here. 99 times out of 100. Yep. Okay. So we draw Godless Shrine, play Godless Shrine tapped, pass the turn. Opponent plays Bloodstained Mire, cracks Bloodstained Mire. This could even be goblins. Could absolutely see that being a thing. Fetch a basic mountain. They play Kroxa. So discard Nether Spirit. Because we get back Nether Spirit for free. Okay. We draw Plains. I don't really want to play Urborg. So I'm going to play a Plains. We're going to 2-mode this. Duress, Drain. I'm going to actually pitch Urborg, because I really don't want to play it. They have nothing worth duressing. Are you kidding me? Oh my god. Alright. Pass the turn. I am very slightly tilted right now. So I will do my best to play as though I am not tilted at all. So opponent has the option of either casting Sword here, casting Seasoned Pyromancer, or casting Confidant. If they cast Seasoned Pyromancer, they can keep 1 card in hand. I think Seasoned Pyromancer is the correct choice for my opponent, but they may not know what they're playing against. And the only reason I say it's the correct choice is because we are playing Smallpox in this deck. Opponent fetches up a Godless Shrine. Alright, opponent plays Seasoned Pyromancer, so let's see what they discard. One of them is going to be Dark Confidant or Sword of Feast and Famine. And it probably is Dark Confidant because my opponent is already at half of their starting life total, basically. I imagine my opponent keeps Sword. They could discard both of them. If my opponent gets back Kroxa, we are in a world of hurt. So I would really like to draw Smallpox, just to stop my opponent from playing enough lands to have Kroxa. They discard both Confidant and Sword. Alright. We draw Inquisition. So give them the old hand check. Bolt. They have 2 lands, so here comes Kroxa. Play Marsh Flats. Go to combat. Attack for 2. No blocks for the opponent. Yeah, I literally don't think we can answer a Kroxa. There's no card we can top deck that does anything right now. If we had top decked a Kaya's Guile there instead of an Inquisition, we would have some game left in the tank, but with an active Kroxa and other creatures involved, like, our Edict effects aren't going to make a difference. Yeah. Alright. We're going to game 2. Which sucks, but, you know, what can you do? So versus my opponent's deck, Surgical and Nile Spellbomb in, as well as Timely Reinforcements. We don't need Plague Engineer. I could bring in Damnation as well, just to have an additional answer. I'm going to cut Nether Spirit. Brutality is nice because it kills Dark Confidant and a couple other of the problem creatures early. It doesn't kill Magmatic Channeler, though, which there's a good chance my opponent is also playing. So we're going to cut those all together. And I think we cut 1 Thoughtseize, even though it's great, just because we don't have a lot of room in this deck. Maybe I don't need Timely. I'll try it like this. Our other cards just seem more important than Timely to me. Well, we have Thoughtseize, and Inquisition, and Flagstones. No Smallpox, no Surgical, but I think this is a fine hand to keep. Hopefully we can stick Lily quickly. Start Urborg. Start Inquisition. So opponent has Inquisition, Confidant, Stoneforge Mystic, and Seasoned Pyro. They're not playing anything on turn 1. I'm going to take Inquisition. I don't want them even seeing what I have in my hand, if I can avoid it. Now, on turn 2, I have the option of Thoughtseizing Confidant or Mystic. And depending on what I draw here, I'm probably going to Thoughtseize Mystic. Okay, Marsh Flats. Yeah, we're going to take Stoneforge Mystic. Confidant is really scary, but we can answer it with a Liliana downtick if we have to. So take Stoneforge Mystic. They're holding 2 Blackcleave Cliffs. Oh, crap. Oh, they still have the sword. I don't know why I dismissed the sword. So they have these 4 cards plus sword. Play Marsh Flats, pass the turn. They fetch a Savai Triome, which tells me they're probably not playing Blood Moon. At least not anytime soon. Okay, they play Confidant. Fetch Godless Shrine tapped. We untap. Draw Nile Spellbomb. Play Flagstones, and we gotta go with Liliana downtick. Because we can't let our opponent be drawing extra cards here. I mean, as much as we can avoid, anyway. Okay, pass the turn. This opponent's probably going to play their other Blackcleave Cliffs into a Seasoned Pyromancer just to go as wide as they can, because that's really good versus Liliana. So we know they're still holding Sword unless they discard it here, which they do. They also discard Croxa. Okay, we draw Bloodchief's Thirst. I have a plan. Uptick Lily, discard Souls, opponent discards Magmatic Channeler, play Spellbomb, nuke my opponent's grave. We're not going to draw here because we need to flashback Lingering Souls. Okay, pass the turn. If we can top deck a land, that would be fantastic. Sad when you crack Spellbomb and don't have the mana to pay into it. Okay, opponent swings all out at Lily. So trade off a Spirit and chump Seasoned Pyromancer, so Lily lives at 1. They play Confidant, okay. So we untap, we draw Nile Spellbomb. Bloodchief's Thirst, kill Confidant. Nile Spellbomb. Sack it and draw. Smallpox. Alright, uptick. We're going to discard Smallpox. Opponent discards Stoneforge Mystic. Pass to our opponent. I mean, if they have, like, Kolagon's Command, that would just be devastating. Okay, they play a Seasoned Pyromancer, that's also pretty good. So they hit us for 1, they kill Lily of the Veil. They also pitched another Seasoned Pyromancer. We untap and draw Kaya's Guile. Pass the turn. We can either make our opponent sack and exile their grave so they don't get back Seasoned Pyromancer, or we can sack and get a blocker. If we're going to sack and exile the grave, we need to do it right now so that they don't play a land. Yeah, I'm actually going to do that. This is pretty minimal, but our opponent's cards line up very well against ours. Like, their deck is almost the antithesis of what we want to be doing, because they play nothing but creatures that draw you extra cards. Like, they have Confidant, they have Channeler, they have Stoneforge Mystic, they have Seasoned Pyromancer. And then, like, in addition to us wasting our own resources, they have Croxa. Sometimes they run Smallpox. Like, it's just a bad time for us. Okay, we get a Lingering Souls. Cast it. Like, I'm not even sure what we can top deck to try and get ahead here. I think my opponent's just going to win this. Okay, they crack their fetch lands just so they can thin their deck a little bit. Like, Liliana of the, or Waker of the Dead, when we play her, is literally just going to be either a removal spell or a discard spell. Trade off for a 1/1. Take 4. 4 mana walkers. Well, if we can play Sorin, Sorin can gain us tons of life. So I'm going to take a chance here. If my opponent attacks with both their creatures, and they should, so they probably will, I am not going to block, leave myself dead to bolt if they've got it, because the only way we're ever getting out of this nightmare is by drawing a land and upticking Sorin. Take 4, go to 3. Opponent passes. Land. Untapped. That is the opposite of a land. Why would you do this to me? Yeah. Alright, that's game. It had to be a land and it had to be there. And if we had beaten the Valakut opponent like we were supposed to... Like, our opponent was, like, preordained to win that with that kind of top deck, though. So I guess maybe I wasn't supposed to win, but we probably wouldn't have run into this deck. Alright. Well, I'll see you guys in round 5. Alright. Round 5, here we go. Well, this is one of our better openers versus just about any deck on the draw, anyway. So we're going to keep. Opponent starts Tranquil Thicket. So I'm going to start Godless Shrine into Inquisition. Let's take a look at what's going on. So opponent is Devoted Druid combo, it looks like. Ancient Stirrings and Summoner's Packs. Interesting Hall of the Bandit Lord. It's kind of like Besiege You, but instead of giving a creature uncounterable, it gives the creature haste. So take Devoted Druid, pass the turn. Opponent drew a Mishra's Bauble, so they crack it. Probably play Ancient Stirrings. Yep. They get a Windswept Teeth, which they may or may not play right now. They play Hall of the Bandit Lord. They draw a card, we untap. Play Shambling Vent. Pass the turn. Opponent plays Windswept Teeth and passes. We draw a Swamp. Play a Swamp. Play Kaya. Uptick Kaya, exiling Bauble and Devoted Druid. I suspect some Lurish shenanigans are happening. Opponent cracks Windswept Heath. Gets Temple Garden tapped. They untap. Draw. Play a Windswept Heath. Crack Windswept Heath. Summoner's Pact. Okay. They get to search their library for a green creature card. Deadshot Minotaur. And they Summoner's Pact again for Duskwatch Recruiter. They play Devoted Druid. They cycle Deadshot Minotaur. They play Conjurer's Bauble. Sack it. And scoop. Oh, so they were trying to combo off right there. I see. Interesting. Okay, so we need to have Surgical Extraction in this. We need to have probably Collective Brutality. And I suspect as long as we disrupt what our opponent is doing immediately, we're going to win. I think if we take them off of their like primary game plan of Devoted Druid, they probably don't have a backup plan that can beat a heavy attrition deck like this. So this game might be over as early as turn 1. If we can Thoughtseize a Devoted Druid and then just Surgical Extract it. Same if we can Bloodchief's Thirst or Fatal Push it. Or Smallpox. There's a lot of ways we can do this. Alright. So opponent gets to decide whether or not they want to play first. Man, if we had an Urborg or a Swamp, this hand would be good, but we got to mulligan that. This is a bit better. I think we put back Sorin. So we can start Godless Shrine into Inquisition. Opponent starts Verdant Catacombs. We draw a second Inquisition. So Inquisition our opponent. We whiff. Completely whiff. Wow. Mystic Enforcer. 4 mana 3/3 with Threshold. It gets 3/3 and has flying and protection from black. That has to be a time-shifted card. Alright, well they get us with the They get us with the Inquisition-proof hand. Technically, this is a cantrip that can't be taken with Inquisition. Opponent cycle Street Wraith, Incubation. They get another Mystic Enforcer. Play a Windswept Heath. We untap. Draw another Smallpox. I don't think we're Smallpoxing yet. I will cast another Inquisition, just to be sure. Alright. Fetch with Marsh Flats. Get a Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. I think the Edict effects are gonna be what ends up getting my opponent. Like, Mystic Enforcer is pretty great versus targeted removal, but we're almost mono Edicts. Okay, opponent plays Windswept Heath, cracks it. Gets a basic Forest. Casts Incubation. Gets a Duskwatch Recruiter, which is going to run right into Smallpox. We get a Lingering Souls, which is perfect. Pitch Lingering Souls. I'm not sure if they had 3 Windswept Heaths or only... Okay, they just pitched one. Sack Flagstones. Get another Godless Shrine. Pass the turn. Opponent Ancient Stirrings. They do find a land, and it's Hall of the Bandit Lord, which is potentially very dangerous, because Mystic Enforcer is quite large. So I'm going to play Liliana of the Veil, uptick. We're going to dump Collective Brutality. Opponent dumps a Mystic Enforcer, which probably means their last card is a land, and if it is, they're going to pay a bunch of life to play Mystic Enforcer, and then immediately snipe Liliana. 6/6 Flying Haste. Opponent is only at 8, though. So Liliana down. We untap. Draw Lingering Souls. Okay. I think we Smallpox here, because we have no other way to answer that if they play another creature. Sack our Odd Godless Shrine out. Opponent sacks Hall of the Bandit Lord, so they presumably won't be tempted to tap it for mana. Opponent sacks Mishra's Bauble. Untaps. Draws a card. They have 2 cards in hand. 3 lands on board. Play a Windswept Heath. Crack it. They go down to 6. Get a Plains. Go down to 5. Play Mystic Enforcer. Wow, alright. They were prepared. Flashback Lingering Souls. I have to say, I have never seen this card before. Ever. So, Opponent traverse the Ulvenwald. They definitely have Delirium. So they can get any creature or land. I mean, if it's a combo piece, it's getting thirsted. Like if it's Devoted Druid. It is Devoted Druid. They play Devoted Druid. They do not attack because they are at a very low life total. We draw Thoughtseize. Kill Druid. Pass the turn. No attacks. Opponent cycles Dissenter's Deliverance. Okay. So they're playing a bunch of, like, random, potentially good sideboard-ish cards that just have cycling. So they can help get through their deck a little bit faster, as well as a presumably build Threshold, which is kind of interesting. If we top deck a land, we can just Liliana downtick, kill Mystic Enforcer, and then swing for 4, and they'll go to 1. And my opponent's got to have a pretty good set of top decks. Another Mystic Enforcer. They go down to 4. Alright, land please. Collective Brutality is not a land, but it does kill my opponent, so I guess I should be thankful. Attack them for 4. They block 2 spirits. They go down to 2. And then we get them with the old 2 mana, 2 damage black spell. Opponent's deck was kind of sweet. We get ourselves a treasure chest. So let's open it. 5 play points, a Nethroi, Apex of Death, and a Colossal Whale. Alright, let's take a look at the deck list really quick. I'll ramble for a bit, and then I'll call this video good. So I've played several versions of Black-White Pox, and I like this one. I think Nether Spirit, in a lot of situations, is very good. It's basically free to play in a deck like this because you want cards to discard. I've just never had much luck with it. In general, I'm better off pitching a Lingering Souls, or, you know, some other kind of flashbackable spell. It might be better as either the 4th Thoughtseize or 3rd Collective Brutality in the main. Mazemind Tome seems a little bit odd, but it's nice in these kinds of decks because they struggle quite a lot with getting recouping card advantage when you're dumping cards so much, and Mazemind Tome is, I mean, it's a cheap card advantage engine. It can scry, it gains you life. It's the kind of thing you want in this deck. I almost would prefer, in this deck, seeing Mazemind Tome be 2 more Kaya's Guile, or a Kaya's Guile and a Kaya Orzhov Usurper. I like the other 4 mana Sorin better, and I'll show you why. So the dream is, and you can play one of either, and in fact, I probably would if you like Sorin Solemn Visitor, especially for his ult, which is way overkill, just put your opponent in the abyss. I like Liliana Waker of the Dead. I don't have any criticisms here. I like it because it's basically just Lily of the Veil number 5, so no real complaints about that one. But Sorin Solemn Visitor, his uptick can gain you a bunch of life if you have tokens. Otherwise, his uptick does nothing. So when you play him, you generally will have to downtick, get yourself a vampire token. The vampire token probably is going to have to chump block unless you just cast a ton of removal or your opponent's completely out of action, which is maybe like a 30 to 40% chance. So it's not super unreasonable, but it's not the most likely thing that's going to happen when you play this deck. And then, of course, his ult, like I said, is way overkill. Sorin Lord of Innistrad protects himself on his uptick. When you protect him with a life-linking vampire token, he's out of bolt range, which is huge. Sorin Solemn Visitor does not do that. So Sorin Solemn Visitor, in my opinion, is weak to bolt. This one can make much bigger swings on life total, but provided you already have a board, which may be a lot to ask when you're casting Smallpox. Lord of Innistrad makes vampire tokens by virtue of just existing. In addition, his downtick makes all of your tokens for the rest of the game permanently bigger, with no way for your opponent to interact with it, because it's an emblem. You can get multiple of this emblem. So like uptick, downtick is a fun way to be playing this Sorin. You almost never play him just a downtick for damage unless it would be lethal because you have like 2 to 5 Lingering Souls tokens. I think this Sorin is almost universally better than Solemn Visitor in this style of deck. Also, his ultimate, which is really rare to get to, because it takes 3 turns to get there. If you ever were in a situation where you just needed to keep upticking, you just wanted vampires, you just wanted to take over the game, and like the down tick wasn't necessary, or maybe you're in a board stall, Sorin Lord of Innistrad immediately breaks the board stall. It gives you your opponent's 3 best creatures or planeswalkers. And it ults just 1 turn later than Solemn Visitor does, but it also is making blockers the entire time. So if I was playing this deck, and I might still play this deck more, I might give it a rest for a Mad Meta Magic or 2 and then come back to it. This is the changes that I would make to this deck. The very first thing I would do, drop both Sorins, add 2 Sorin Lord of Innistrad. Because that card, in my opinion, is crazy. I don't think I have another Kaya, but I am going to drop Nether Spirit, and I want another Thoughtseize, for sure. Actually, I lied, because this completely slipped my mind for a moment. Well, no, we can keep the 4th Thoughtseize in, because Thoughtseize leads to some of the deck's strongest lines. I'm actually going to cut a Maze Mind Tome, and I would play something like a single Cling to Dust. These perform sort of the same thing. They both draw cards. They both can gain life. Cling to Dust is Grave Hate, though, and Maze Mind Tome is more strictly card selection, card draw, and life gain. You can play both. In my opinion, I would cut both Maze Mind Tomes and play Cling to Dust instead. I think that's stronger. Versus something like Kroxa, we have an answer to Kroxa that can gain us life. We can draw cards. Potentially, if we dump a whole bunch of cards in the grave, we can start sniping cards out of our opponent's graveyard to help recoup card advantage. We dump our hand faster, which means when we get to Smallpox, Liliana, that sort of area of the game, we will have less cards in hand, meaning that like the odds of our hand being empty is much higher, which means the symmetrical discard effects are free as far as we're concerned when we're Hellbent. And I think this is how I would try to play the deck next. You could drop a Bloodchief's Thirst, play a 3rd Kaya's Guile, or you could drop a Bloodchief's Thirst for like a Dismember even, just to help kind of round out your utility, because playing something like Dismember can hit something like the Stormwing entity that we saw, whereas Bloodchief's Thirst only hits it if you're kicking it, and Fatal Push doesn't hit it at all. Kaya's Guile hits it, but Blitz also plays a lot of creatures, and unless, well, we've got a pretty good Blitz matchup, so I guess I shouldn't be using that as an example, but it could give you problems for certain high CMC creatures. Like, Dismember hits something like Gurmag Angler as an example. Now, to be fair, we're playing a crapload of Edicts, and most high CMC creatures can't survive a bunch of Edicts. The only time it's going to matter is if your opponent has, like, Seasoned Pyromancer, or, like, they conditionally go wide in some circumstances. I would choose this deck if Death Shadow becomes heavier in the metagame. This deck, in general, wrecks Death Shadow, because they try and 1-for-1 you, and they play single high power and toughness threats, which means your Edicts are going to be crazy. They're very low to the ground. They don't play that many lands, which means denying them mana strategically with Smallpox is huge. And you're just going to beat them in an attrition game. I also like playing decks like this versus Control, because you just lead on a hand hate spell, and your opponent's going to have some trouble. The sideboard I would swap up. I would drop the Plague Engineers, probably for 2 more Timely Reinforcements. I've never been a huge fan of Plague Engineer in decks like this. It is conditionally very good. Like, if you queue against like an Elves player and you name Elf with Plague Engineer, you're going to have a good time. The problem is, I think that that's a little bit unlikely, and while it can be good versus stuff like humans, the power and toughness pump is permanent, so you can't just snipe a Lord and then expect your Plague Engineer to clean up the rest. And we need like some heavier life gain versus burn. That's the other thing that I was going to say. This deck is slightly soft to burn, because we do play a bunch of Thoughtseizes. Cling to Dust helps. Collective Brutality helps. The last version of this deck that I played actually played a Stoneforge Mystic package, and was also maxed out on Kaya's Guile, so like you could just go and get Batterskull and close out the game that way. But I would try playing the list like this. I know I made a lot of changes, but I think most of the changes I made are moving towards where the deck should be. I would probably tweak the sideboard a little bit more. I'm not going to do that right now, mainly because I'm out of time to record for the day, but I think you could probably drop Vampire Hexmage unless you're like. I really think you can drop Vampire Hexmage and you can either play a Bloodchief's Thirst or even a Hero's Downfall or a Never to Return because that has some utility out of the graveyard. That's another good removal spell. Regisar as a way to close out the game faster, I really don't like that much. Honestly, I'd probably cut both Hexmage and Regisar, either for a second Damnation, just so I had it, another Fragmentize or a Disenchant, a Anguished Unmaking, so that you could answer anything, a third Surgical or a third Nile Spellbomb, or even a third Damping Sphere. I think all of those things would be reasonable. Anyway, this is how I would play the deck, and I've played this deck a lot, but I'm by no means an expert. So if you disagree with what I've said here, or you're like, Kano, you're dumb, you had this in your hand the whole time, you should have just mulliganed for this, blah, blah, you're not playing the deck right, let me know in the comments below, because I need to learn. And constructively, of course, be nice in your comments, and I will be courteous and respond. And anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Glad we didn't trophy, but glad we got a treasure chest out of the deal. And I hope to see you guys next time. I want you to know that you're all wonderful human beings. And if you like content like this, you should leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel. And you can also follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though the last few have been earlier. And consider joining our Discord. Link is in the description below. We got a lot of fun people in there brewing up decks. It's kind of like my Twitch chats, if you've seen any of my stream VODs that I upload, except every day of the week. So it's a ton of fun, and I hope to see you guys there. You're all wonderful human beings, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!